welcome to Lifeline. Today's video I'm dedicating to getting your first job as a nurse. So I just went through the whole process of applying for jobs, interviewing for jobs, and happily can say that getting my first job. So I'm really excited to share the information and the advice that I've gained throughout this whole entire process, because it is a long and draining one. So I'm going to go over things like how to prepare your application, how to make sure that your application is like top tier, no mistakes, no nothing when you get the interview, things to ask during the interview. And before we get into everything, I just want to go over some words of encouragement. First, I'm going to say that I know a lot of times with nursing, they tell you that your first job should be in med-surg. I'm just here to tell you guys that I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you should definitely shoot for the career you want, and maybe that means that you're only applying for pediatric nurse positions or ICU, or maybe you want to do something in the ED. I don't think you have to start off at med-surg to be a successful nurse. I think starting off, a lot of things that you learn in med-surg, you learn at other specialties. So if you feel really passionate about a specialty, just go for it. You don't think of med-surg as some stepping stone into getting to something greater. I think one that kind of devalues what the med-surg nurse does, and kind of doesn't really acknowledge how much the med-surg nurse does, when people kind of consider it as just kind of an entry-level position. But with that being said, if you don't land the job of your dreams your first time around, don't get discouraged. Every single day is a new opportunity, so just keep trying, keep pushing. As soon as you get your job, then you'll at least have some experience. If you realize that you're not happy in that field, just go on and keep applying. There's a lot of turnover in nursing jobs, so eventually a position will fall in your lap that will make you happy and that will fit all your needs. Alrighty, hi guys. So I'm back. I had to change around the angle just because, I don't know, it wasn't the most flattering for me. But I have my iPad with my notes, and if you see me looking down, that's what I'm referring back to. But first things business, I want to talk about your application itself and kind of how you prep to begin to apply, because they say your interview begins right at the submit button for that application, because that's when they're going to start seeing your thoroughness, how detailed you are. Really important that your application has no mistakes whatsoever in them, that you provide them everything that they want, that you provide it in the format that they want. I know a lot of times they'll be only provide your resume and cover letter in whatever format. So just make sure that it is compatible with whatever that they're asking for. So submitting your resume, a lot of times everything's kind of lined up perfectly, and then you go ahead and you submit that Word doc. My advice to you is to, instead of keeping it as a Word doc, convert it into a PDF, because then it'll keep the way you format it. Because sometimes when you upload it, the formatting gets all wonky and the computer doesn't know how to read it. So it's probably better to keep it as a PDF, so that way it remains completely legible. All the contact information of your employers are on there in case they want to contact you, where you work, the months you work. These are all important. If you are a new grad student, it's really important that you are including your clinicals on your resume and in your application. So clinical, the hospital that you were at, the unit that you were on, the months that you were there, the time that you were, how long you spent there. My school, I think we did 84 hours, because not all schools give the same amount of clinical hours, and that's what employers are sometimes looking for. Do you have this much time with an ICU patient, or this much time? And since we are on the topic of clinicals, I think a really cool thing, if you, let's say you don't have that much experience, I would recommend expanding on your clinical experience, especially if it's a specialty that you want down. Keep a little notebook beside you, right? And be sure that on the type of diagnoses that you are seeing, the type of treatment that you're providing. So if you do any type of PEG tubes or you start an IV, write that down, because it'll be helpful when you're writing your resume, so that way you could start thinking about what kind of things you did do in these different units, and how you're able to show them that you do have some skills behind you. Your clinical instructors are a great resource, so make sure that you're using them, especially when it comes to recommendation letters. So I know for me, I always tried my best to make sure that my clinical instructor and I were on good terms with each other, that I was, actively participating in our post-clinical discussions and submitting assignments on time, and, showing them cool stuff that I was being a part of, because within a week, I would always ask them for a recommendation letter, because it'll just be good to have later on when you're applying for jobs, that hi, I had this clinical instructor from this hospital and they recommend me for this position. And you could always just ask them to type it up in a Word doc, and then as you're applying to different hospitals, just change out that information. Make sure that you're using your clinical instructors for recommendation letters, because they are a great resource, as well as any other healthcare professionals that you may interact with at work. So let's say you work on a unit and you have a great relationship with the doctor on the floor, maybe your charge nurse or any nurses on the floor, your manager. If you feel comfortable asking them for a recommendation letter, just go ahead and ask them, just that way you could always keep it in your back pocket in case you're applying for a hospital and So another thing with clinical is a lot of times during interviews, they'll ask you questions like, how do you work on a team? How do you show initiative? How do you like kind of do certain things? So I would let me think specifically, times that you've had a difficult like patient scenario. So it's a good thing that it's really good if you guys, if there's anything that you notice where you felt like you were going above and beyond, writing that down so that way you don't forget it. And so that way you're able to refer back to it when you have an interview and you're able to expand on that experience. Like a time I had a difficult patient was when I was a nursing student and this patient called me out of my name and I had to like, appropriately correct this patient so that way, it wasn't an issue anymore. I think that's really important because you want to come up with very genuine experiences when you are at these when you are interviewing, because a lot of times there's a nurse educator on that line, and usually a nurse educator is somebody who trains nurses and like provides them like the knowledge to perform skills correctly, so they're able to see right through like any type of BS that you provide them. So it's really important that you're giving them genuine answers, because if you're lying, I feel like there would be the type of person to be able to tell. Hospitals, usually they get so many applications that come in on the daily basis. So it is really hard to stand out amongst like hundreds and hundreds of other people. But the thing that a lot of hospitals have is this applicant tracking system where they like put all the people that they apply, they put through this like computer system, and then the computer will see if you're qualified for the position based on how much words or wording that you have from your resume that aligns with the job description. So if you could be completely qualified for the position, but if you don't use like the specific terminology and phrases that are in that job description, then you may not get recognized. You may like just get filtered out for being unqualified. A program that I use that really helped, I feel like it helped me like stand out amongst like hundreds and hundreds of other applicants, is called Jobscan.com. I'll link it in the description box. Basically what it does is it kind of takes your resume and you can insert it into the program, and then you copy and paste the job description, and from there it kind of like uses like the most common like ATS systems that hospitals or like job employers use to filter out things, and they'll tell you like what to add in your resume, what to take out, like just give you like tips about that kind of stuff. And it's really great because it'll even score you on how well like your resume aligns with your job description. When it comes to applying for jobs, I would imagine that hospitals were kind of like taking in applicants on like a rolling basis. So whoever is the most qualified that they like at the beginning of them is who they're probably going to be more likely to hire, because they don't want to keep on like, it's a lot to like hire people. If you've ever been on like an interview board, like it's just draining, like sitting through all these interviews. So if they could find somebody in the beginning, they'd rather do that rather than waiting till the end of something. So my recommendation is get your application in as soon as possible. Make sure that it's perfect, that all the things that you need are in there, and then submit it like the night or within the first week, because I feel like it'll put your application at the top of other people's, or at least like people may see yours first beside other than other people that may come in later. So that's my recommendation. I know for what jobs, when I was applying for like different nurse residency programs, like I had my entire application ready, and by the time 24 hours had rolled out after the application was out, I put in my application already, and I felt like it was nice because then you're able to get the ball rolling on stuff sooner rather than later. Cool things to add in your resume is your LinkedIn account. So I would recommend having a LinkedIn account because I think it's just helpful. Let me share my story. So there was a job that I was applying for, and I have a LinkedIn account, and I frequently get on there, post stuff on there, and just keep it active. There was this one post that I had that went like freaking viral. Like it had like over like 7,000 views, over 200 people had liked it or like interacted with it. So it was like a great post that I had. And later on this recruiter reached out to me for the hospital that I work at now, and funny enough, it was great because she wanted to connect with me on LinkedIn, but we were already connected, which kind of I felt like made me stand out a little bit more. But not only were we already connected, but she already liked like that one post that I was just talking about. So I just felt like I don't think a LinkedIn account will hurt you. And a lot of people may feel that like, oh, I'm going into nursing, I don't need a LinkedIn account, that's just for business majors. Yes, that's true. I mean, like, sure, that might be true. Business majors probably use it a lot more, but a lot of recruiters are on LinkedIn because it's so easy to find like qualified applicants that are like ready to work and ready to like hit the ground running. The reason why I shared that was because I would recommend having your LinkedIn, like a link to your LinkedIn, like a hyperlink in your resume somewhere, so that way they're easily able to click it, and then they see all these different things that you were part of. So you could post things about like you being at clinicals or your volunteer experience, or like a social media for like business. So like it's not like Facebook, like it's not as casual as that, but it's definitely supposed to be like more casual than like your resume. It just lets people see your personality. All right, so now we got to the part where you got your interview. Congratulations, you guys are gonna get your interview, don't worry, it's gonna eventually happen. How do you prepare for this interview? And this part is always like the most stressful for me, because there's so many ways that there's so many different questions that they could ask you during an interview, and it could be overwhelming thinking of it all. But for me, I'm the type of person that likes to prepare for worst, best case scenarios. So what I did was I made a Google Doc, and I'll link that in the description box, of all the different interview questions that I've heard people be asked, or that I got asked, or things that I've seen on the internet. And from there, I'll write out my answers like in that Google Docs. That way I'm able to, like, you know, practice saying it. Obviously I'm not gonna read it verbatim come the interview time, but if I continue to practice it, it'll become like, you know, it'll just like roll off my tongue like with more times that I say it. So check out that link that I list in the description box. It'll have interview questions that I got asked, interview questions that I've had other people ask, or just common things that I think are, you know, fair game to be asked during an interview, especially for like new grads. When it comes to picking an interview time, I would definitely 100% go with the first available date that you guys have. Like, don't wait till the end because you're nervous about like how you're going to present, like you feel like you didn't prepare enough. I think it's so much better to apply early on, because if they're taking in people on a rolling basis, and whoever they see first is who they want to go with, you don't want to be the person at like 10th in line. You want to be number one, so that way like at least you set the bar, like they know you already, like you already interviewed with them. So don't wait, just go ahead and take the earliest time. A lot of times when I'm interviewing for a job, I'll try to find interview questions, because I don't want to be like anxious about like, oh, they asked me a question that I wasn't prepared about. I want to have all cards out on the table. I want to know everything that there is to know, because I don't want to be blindsided. So I'll type in like the hospital name, new grad nurse, interview questions, and from there like I'll usually get like a list of like questions that they typically ask. And sometimes, like, you know, it's hard to tell, like it's not going to be like 100% guaranteed that they're going to ask you those questions, because each unit's going to ask different questions, but usually they're pretty generic. There'll be like a couple questions maybe about like, oh, you have a patient that has X, Y, and Z, like what orders would you expect, or what care would you prioritize, which are fair game. They're usually not like too complicated. And this part might sound creepy, but I'm gonna jump back on LinkedIn. I think if you're able to Google, if you know like the names of who is interviewing you, I would recommend looking them up on LinkedIn or looking them up on Google, just that way you're able to like see the kind of, like, hopefully if their name pops up, you could like read up about them and see what kind of things they're interested in, and then you could bring that up during your own interview. They're looking for somebody that wants to get to know them, so I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's creepy. Just, you know, I guess tread lightly. Don't be like, yeah, I know you got married this year and you have this many kids. Like, that's creepy. But, you know, just looking up at their interests and things that, you know, things that they're into is great. And usually one of the questions that you get asked during interviews is, why do you want to work for our hospital? That's like one of those times where they want to see if you did the research at their hospital. So recommendations that I would provide is probably looking on their social media, like the hospital system itself. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, like a lot of, or even like the homepage of like the hospital, they'll have information about like things that they're really proud about, and that's like a great thing to reference during your interview, that like, oh yeah, I know you guys are like, you got like an A+ rating in patient safety and you guys are super proud about that, and I like that in a hospital X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is. I think it's just important that you guys show that you did your research at the hospital and you didn't just kind of like apply to it because you were interested in it. It's also good if you guys are familiar with their core values or their mission statement, because once again, that basically tells you like what their like values are in the hospital, and if those are things that align with your values, you definitely want to mention that during your interview. And a great place to bring up those like core values and mission statements would be, why do you want to work for us? Or at the end, if they ask you, why should we hire you? And if you've never been on an interview before, a great resource to use to help you get in like that flow of somebody asking you questions and you answering back is called Big Interview. I know my school provided us like access to it. I don't know if all schools do, but I'd imagine it's a free account. You could build an account and basically it just kind of like does like a virtual interview with you. Like there's already like pre-recorded questions, and then you record yourself answering each one, and then you're able to reference it back at a later point. With COVID, a lot of interviews are happening like through Zoom or through Microsoft Teams, so use that to your advantage. You guys want to have like notes out or like have like little sticky notes about things just to remind you to say, like, that's like the perfect time. Like at that point, like there's like less of an excuse as to why you fumbled on the question. I mean, like, yes, anxiety can get you, but I would prepare for like the worst. And like, if you really want to hit on like something, like what are your key strengths, and you have like a little sticky note on your laptop that has them, that way you remember them. Like, I think I don't see anything wrong with that. You're just, you know, making sure that your employer knows what your strengths are. I also kept the list right beside me of things that I really wanted to make sure that I said during my interview. So, all right, excuse the wind. If you were mentioned by an employee, just remind them that in your interview, because they might forget. Like if they're interviewing like 3 people that day, they may forget, like, oh yeah, so and so got recommended by somebody who already works here. Mention that. If you had any direct experience in that specialty, like the position that I'm in, I don't have much experience in the specialty, but I did have a clinical rotation through it. So I mentioned that, and I kind of used specific examples from the clinical book that I mentioned about how like I dealt with different patient situations through that. So like the time I had a difficult patient, I referred back to like this young girl who was going through a specific diagnosis in that specialty. I'm not saying the specialty because I want Ricky and I to talk about that in a later video, like what our plans are after graduation. But yeah, I was talking about like specific things in that specialty, because once again, it helps them like vision you already in the role if you're talking about specific things in healthcare or in that specialty. I know a lot of times we have like a lot of answers from like different things that we're working on, but if you can make your answer specific to that unit and hospital and healthcare, like that's probably great. But if you don't have an answer that's specific, like a time you had to deal with conflict in healthcare, but you do have it in like a time that you are on like a sports team or part of this organization, go ahead and use that example. Sorry, and to continue, some cool things, other things that I mentioned was if I was part of like any like extracurricular. So I was the president of an organization, and so I put that on. I made sure to mention that because I wanted to show them that I had like leadership style. I got an award about leadership, and I put that on my resume, and I was so glad that I did, because at the end of my interview, I asked this one question, like, do you have any hesitations about me moving forward? And she said, no questions, but I want to congratulate you on getting like X, Y, and Z award. And I was like, thank goodness I mentioned that, because what if I didn't? Like, it's just like one of those, once again, cherry on the top of the freaking ice cream when, you know, the employer is like saying congratulations to you about something that you worked on. So during my interview, I was never asked the question like, why should we hire you? Or like even sometimes tell me about yourself. I don't know if anybody ever always asks me that. I wish they did, but I would recommend definitely having a strong answer for that, because if they ask you that, it's definitely gonna like, usually tell me about yourself is like one of the first questions that they ask you. And if you have a strong one, it just helps like set the game, or like set like the environment for who you are as a worker. Like have like a great one that like really just hits on the key things that you want to work on. That's short and sweet. Don't make it too long, like 5 minutes. Keep it between like a 2 to 3 minute response. And just talk about the things that you want to highlight. So if you worked in that specific specialty, if you did anything that's specific to, you know, the interest of your employers, if you did volunteer service, or I don't know, maybe you got an award, or if I was in a graduate course. So I talked about, I know the hospital that I'm going to be working at, they like it when nurses have that are interested in continuing their education. So when I mentioned that I was already in graduate courses and it was on my resume, I think once again it just helped show that I was like the type of person that they wanted to align with. So make sure that you guys are including like things like that, because as well as also tell me why should we hire you. Once again, that's a good point to bring in your core values, or bring in their core values, and how like specifically you like when hospitals do that, because once again, it'll just be strong, and it'll just start you off well and also finish you off well, that way they remember you later on. And once again, I really just want to reinforce the idea of doing your research on wherever hospital that you're working on. I don't care if you're interviewing for 10 different hospitals. Do your research on each one, and don't get like, you know, the facts mumbled and jumbled, because once again, they want to feel special. Like, it's an interview both ways, but they also want to feel like they're special in your heart. Especially if it's like a big hospital that's getting like a lot of applicants. You don't want to be like generic. There's little kids playing, I'm sorry. You want to be generic with your responses. So things that I would mention, if they're magnet recognized, that's a great thing to bring up, because a lot of times that just shows that they have like good nursing excellence, and like they care about their nurses. If they have good patient outcomes, if they're a research hospital, if, you know, they just recently got awarded like best hospital in whatever state that they're in, or like, you know, getting certain ratings, like those are things that you want to bring up during your interview, because once again, it shows that you did your research, it shows that you care, it shows that you are motivated to like be in this role. They want to feel special just as much as you want to feel special. And so I also want to give you guys an overview of what to expect come, you know, your interview. time. So usually how it starts off is like you come in. I recommend getting there like 10 to 15 minutes early. Sometimes they'll start it early and they'll get you started, and that's great. They'll definitely introduce themselves. They'll go over the position. Well, in my experience, this is like the order that they did in. So they'll introduce themselves. They will go over the position. If it's a nurse residency, they'll go over like the nurse residency and things to know about that. They'll probably go over like frequently asked questions like how long is orientation? How do we get into the unit that we want? Stuff like that. They don't usually talk about salary until after you get the job interview, unfortunately, but Ricky and I will definitely make a video later on about what to expect come job salaries. Yeah, and they'll probably just ask like, how does vacation work, or how does time off work, like your expectations of how many shifts you'll be in during orientation. They'll go for all of that stuff. Usually, that's been my experience. And then they'll open up they'll start the official interview, where then they'll be like, okay, now tell me about yourself. And that's when you get to start talking. And then, usually I had around like 6 to 8 questions. They weren't like too difficult, once again, because I prepared and I was really happy that I did it that way. The questions weren't too difficult, around 6 to 8 questions. Usually me answering questions lasted about like around like 20 minutes or so. And then afterwards I'll be like, okay, last question, do you have any questions for us? And here is where it's super important to make sure you guys have questions. I'm sure you guys know that. Have good questions prepared, because if you don't have any questions, once again, just makes it look like you don't care about the position, like you're not interested in what's going on there. And the thing with interviews, just remind yourself that if they're offering you an interview, that means that they're already taking time out of their day to see if you are qualified. At this point, they probably already want you to work for their hospital. So this is like, congratulations that you made it this far, because I feel like once you get an interview, the interview is just kind of like a formality, just to make sure that you do align with like their like values and that you will be a good fit. So you just need to put your best self forward and like, having a good interview, because chances are they already want you. Like they don't want to interview like 20 people if they only have 10 positions open. Like it's probably going to be like more narrow. Like maybe they're interviewing 12 people with 10 positions open, just so that way, like, they're not wasting their time in interviewing all these different people and wasting, the interviewer's time too. So if you have an interview, just remember that they already want you. You just need to sell yourself to them that you are qualified. And I will have my fair I did have one interview when I was applying for a nurse externship position. It was the worst interview I've ever had, and I'm not surprised that they didn't offer me the position, because I wouldn't have wanted myself either. It was terrible. But besides that experience, I have been offered like all the places that offered me an interview, they offered me a position too. So I think just keep that in the back of your head, that your interview, like they already want you. So don't get nervous like, oh, like they don't like, no. They want you. They're not gonna waste their time on interviewing somebody that they don't want, okay? And with answering interview questions, I know sometimes it can be real nerve-wracking if you get a question that, you don't know how to answer. So I just wanna tell you guys that it's okay to be like, I'm not sure about that question. Do you mind if we come back to it? That's okay. Or even just taking like 10, 20 seconds to just think about your response, writing something down. Once again, that just kind of shows that you are thoughtful with your response and you don't want to just give them an answer because that's what they want. So don't beat yourself up if you don't know an interview question. I know there was one time where, well, not just one time, but there was multiple times where I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't prepare for that question. And like, I just felt like really blindsided by it. But I just took a second to breathe and just think about like any type of experience that I had in the back of my head to like talk about with them. So that way, I effectively answered the question in a way that wasn't, just kind of like a half-assed way. And when it comes into the interview, once again, make sure that you have questions. But some questions that I feel like when I asked, like they were like, oh, I've never gotten that question. I want to share with you guys so that way you're able to have good interview questions. Hopefully you get the same response that people don't commonly ask these questions, because once again, it'll be something that they remember you by, like, oh yeah, so-and-so asked this question, because you don't want to be like, forgotten about through like the midst of other people because you didn't answer questions in a way that they were looking for, or if you didn't ask questions. So just find something to be memorable to them. But some questions that I recommend asking that I asked during my interview was during at the very end, I asked them, having had this conversation with me, do you have any hesitations about my application or resume that I can clear up before we conclude? Usually, more times than not, they'll probably say like, oh no, we're fine. But once again, I just think it helps, wrap up the interview. And also, if they do have any hesitations about you, you're able to talk about them and, maybe like just like tell them that you're still qualified for this position, even though, like, for example, a hospital that I was applying to, they were asking for a nurse with experience, and I didn't have any experience, and so I asked that question just to see if they had any hesitations about that, because sometimes an experienced nurse versus a new grad is like very different in training, so you just want to clarify like if they are hesitant about you because of that, because you definitely then want to talk about in why should we hire you, like why you are qualified, why you are highly motivated in this field, why picking you as a new grad would still be beneficial, add to the culture, add to a whole bunch of things. So definitely ask that question. Another question I think is great is there was one time I was interviewing for a hospital that we had to go to like different branches of the hospital. So I said, how does the culture differ from like each hospital system? And they were like, oh, we never gotten that question before. So it was good. And then they gave me like their answer, and like, it also just helped me learn about the hospital and like the hospital and like the culture at that hospital. So it was good both ways. And then another one that I think is really, really good, just to ask is, what are your expectations of me on orientation or me during after orientation? And more times than not, they'll say something like, we don't expect you to care for like the sickest patient or handle like a full patient load. Like, we're just looking for somebody who is safe, somebody who reaches out for help, somebody who is looking for opportunities to like further their education. So like, if there's like a co-situation, they would hope that you would go to that co-situation as well to like learn from the situation, even if it isn't yours. So definitely ask that question again. I think it's great, and it definitely will help you see what they're expecting of you as you're coming into this role. Some things to avoid asking during the interview, and yes, I think these are valid questions to ask, but I don't think that they come off well, especially when you're interviewing for places, is asking about the salary, asking about vacation time, asking about paid time off, asking about what the staffing look like. Like, I think these are important, definitely. You want to know that you're walking into a hospital that is staffed good, that has good vacation time, that, has all these things, because obviously there's going to be work-life balance, and you want to be able to not come into this situation where you feel like you're getting taken advantage of. But I don't think those are good questions to ask, because I think it just kind of sets this tone that you're coming in here looking for like some type of advantage. Like, oh, I'm only coming here because we only have to deal with like 3 patients a day and X, Y, and Z, and we have a lot of techs on the floor and stuff like that. I don't think it looks good. Or even like the salary. Once again, that's a valid question to ask, but you don't want to seem like you're coming there only because of the salary. So I would avoid those questions. And also in the description box will be interview questions that I ask / that are good to ask during the end of your interview. So ask them to somebody maybe who already works there, or Googling the answers yourself and trying to find out through there, so that way you have an idea. But I wouldn't ask it to, the recruiter, like the hiring. Something that I learned, like really into like the interview process, is that it's really important that you send whoever you're employing to, whoever you interviewed with, a thank you letter afterwards, because once again, it'll help, once, like, a lot of people probably don't do it, so when you do it, it makes you stand out amongst everybody else, but it just shows, once again, that you care about this position, that you are interested in working here, that you're motivated, X, Y, and Z, So I think, once again, and that's something that I always did, with all interviews that I had, I said a thank you later, and you could just Google those, like, keep it short, like, it shouldn't go. I usually just typed it up in an email. It was like maybe like at most 5 sentences, and I just kind of like thanked them for their time and said like, oh, I'm glad that we talked about this, or I'm glad I got to learn about the culture, stuff like that. I think it's great to send it, if you have an interview at the beginning of the day, have it in their mailbox by the end of the day. If you interview later on in the day, then have it in their mailbox by the next morning. I think those are good rules with them. So just make sure that you have that in there within 24 hours. So that way they're able to like remember, like, oh yeah, Priscilla, who interviewed like yesterday, sent us a thank you letter. I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. And something else, now that I'm on the topic, there was this one hospital, the one that I was talking about, that they asked for like a nurse with experience, but I was coming in without experience. When I found out who was interviewing with me, I also sent an email to them, saying like, I'm excited to meet with you guys, X, Y, and Z. So I got like an introductory email. So I sent them like an introductory email. I was like, so excited to interview with guys. Can't wait till our interview come, whatever date it was. And then, they responded back. And then when the interview was all done, I sent them another thank you email. So that way, I just felt like I just helped I was able to keep on their mind throughout the entire interview process, because once again, I was super nervous about me coming to this position where I didn't have like nursing experience that they were looking for. So I think that's helpful. If you're really, really interested, go ahead and, just reach out to them. Just show them that like you really want to work here. And another piece of advice, a lot of times, I don't know, it depends on the hospital. It depends on the hospital if they'll call you with an offer or if they'll email you, but it's always good to answer your phone like, hello, this is, insert your name. Like, I never did that. I didn't do that until like my very last interview. And like thinking about it, like that's actually so important. Like you don't want to be like, hello. Like it kind of comes off as unprofessional. And following your interview, it's okay to email them about updates on your application. I think it's good to ask them during the interview, what's the timeline of the application moving forward. But let's say like they give you a timeline like about a week, and like it's coming on like a week is like pushing, like it's been like a week and a half. Like it's okay to email them and be like, hi, I interviewed with you guys on XD on like whatever date it was, and just looking to see if there's any updates about the application. Like you're probably applying to like a lot of different hospitals at this point, and so you just want to be sure that you're not declining a position because you think that you won it over at like another hospital, like putting all your eggs in one basket. So it's okay. They understand that you're probably like a qualified applicant for other hospital system, and so like it's okay that you ask them like, what's the timeline moving forward. So I'm kind of coming to the end of all the advice that I have to share with you guys. I think definitely moving forward, I 100% want to do like a new grad nursing series on this channel, so that way I'm just able to like talk you guys through like each process. So with that being like interviews, nurse residency, orientation, after orientation, skills that I'm learning throughout like orientation. I just want to be able to share that with you guys because I always found those like super exciting to watch, like as I was like, you know, starting to begin this process. So I want to finish off this video with talking about things that hiring managers are looking for in applicants, so that way you are able to shape your answers to best, you know, keep those and shape your answers to like, you know, kind of show off that like you have the things that they're looking for. So for me, a lot of times I would find that they're looking for somebody who, they don't expect you to be a master at whatever the job is, like especially like let's say like you're working on an ICU. They don't expect you to work with the sickest patient in the ICU. They want you to just be, once again, safe, you ask for help, and that you are continuously like looking for ways to advance your education. If there's a skill that you really want to work on, they'll appreciate it if you're the type of person that goes out of your way and takes the initiative to do that skill, and like say like, hey guys, like I've never done a trach, I've never, I don't know, maybe done like worked on the ventilator, and be like, okay, and then like a nurse will help like guide you through that process. They're definitely 100%, sorry, it's really windy, they're looking for somebody who is interested in taking that initiative. With that being said, they also want somebody who isn't just looking to advance their education on their shift time. They want to know that you are going to go home and review the content that you're not familiar with, that you're going to look up disease diagnoses, look up treatment plans, like stuff like that, because you're already stressed out during like your shift. Like it's going to be hard for you to also learn. Like it's probably easier for you to learn at home. So once again, they're looking for somebody who wants to expand on their education, expand on their knowledge. I think for me, one thing that I tried to mention in my interviews is that during clinicals, I always went out of, I think I said this at my last interview, for clinicals, the best advice that I was given is to never say no. And so if like a nurse was like, oh, do you want to come see this? Or if there's anybody want to help me out with this, like I was always the clinical student that'd be like, yes, I'll go ahead and I'll help you out with that. Or yes, I want to go see that, because once again, it just shows that like I care about like my education and I really want to like develop my skills. Especially like you're a registered nurse at this point, so it's going to be on you to know these skills. Like somebody's not always going to be able to guide you through every single process, so you have to like take that initiative and have that autonomy that you know that you're able to care for patients with whatever disease that's thrown in front of you. In addition, you're somebody who is going to ask questions, and I've heard this from a lot of hiring managers, that when you don't ask questions during like your orientation, that they become nervous, because it's like, why aren't you asking questions? Like you're a new grad. Like I'm sorry, like new grads don't really know much. So I've never worked as a nurse, so that's me saying that. There's so much that you need to learn. So if you're not asking questions, it kind of makes them anxious, that like, do you know what you're doing? Do you feel like do you feel like you know what you're doing? Like when you don't want to come over like overly confident that you know everything and that there's nothing new to learn for you, but you want to be sure that you're asking questions, showing that you're critically thinking about stuff, like clarifying things, like that you're somebody that's going to ask questions, and like be sure and be safe with your whatever interventions that you're placing with the patient. And once again, that you're a team player. I know nursing is a team sport. Like there's no way that you're not going to be able to ask for, there's no way that you're going to go through an entire shift or go through like a week of shifts without asking somebody for help. So they're looking for somebody who is willing to help out others whenever they're having challenges, or you know, like I said, like they're that they will ask for help if they feel like they're struggling, because that's kind of how nursing goes. Like, that may not be my patient, but because it's my floor and like my hospital, like I care about everybody, so I'm gonna go out of my way and help out that nurse that's struggling. So once again, so for me, hiring managers are looking for people who aren't overly confident, who ask for help, who ask questions, who are team players, and who take their education into their own hands. And so they look for opportunities to, like, you know, advance their education. In the description box, I'm also going to list some more resources that I used during my interview process. So there was like this Katie Keebler. She used to be a neuro ICU nurse. She has like this podcast with like her other friends that are in different hospitals, and there was one podcast where they talked about like interviews, and they went over like a good interview answer versus a bad one. And for me, that like was super helpful in helping me be able to think about like really good interview questions, think of really good interview answers. So I'll link that in the description box. There's another guy on YouTube that I watched that went through like, I don't know, 30 interview questions and gave like great responses for them. So that once again helped me. So I'll definitely share that information with you guys, and the link to Big Interview, as well as the interview questions that I've seen commonly being asked, as well as questions that I would ask during interviews. So I hope this video was super helpful. I'm sorry if it's long. Be on the lookout for a new grad nursing series from me. I'm super excited to share this whole process with you guys. So hope you guys learned something new. If maybe you guys can drop in the description box like something that you learned new from this video. So I'll see you guys later, and thanks for listening. Bye guys.